It's me. I apologize for my voice this morning, for I am recovering from whatever is going around, and it is going around, and it lasts, and I am this close because I want to make sure you get it so you can suffer as have I. I want to thank Mother Natalie and Father Fred for their kind invitation to be here this day. It's a special day in your life, and it's really a special day in my life too. It's a special day in the life of Good Shepherd Church, and I am so glad to be here to be able to share it with you, because I have failed at retirement. And I am supplying in many of our smaller churches around the diocese and other places, helping clergy get coverage for when they have things they have to do, like take a vacation, or just want a day off, or go and see their children graduate from college, or, you know, there's just a lot of things like that. And it's my pleasure to do that with them. And you would be surprised how many clergy from the Nashville area think it's too far to go out into the environs, yet the environs are always expected to come into Nashville. You've heard me tell that before if you've been here a long time. I was asked to talk about starting Good Shepherd and what it was like 3 decades ago. Now, if you weren't already feeling a little bit old, let me add to it. I will be 72 years old next month. I look this way because of you. But no, I was asked to talk about my call and about the one who's chosen to take this on, starting a new church. And so here goes. Sit back, relax, because in order to talk about that, I have to tell a story or 2, or 3, or 4. Mother Natalie gave me a time frame, but since you're having a big coffee time after this, we've got nothing to interfere with our just taking all the time we want. In 1993, I was the rector of the Church of St. Mary Magdalene in Fayetteville, Tennessee, in this diocese. I was contacted by the Diocese of Arkansas and asked to come there and start a new church in a suburb of Little Rock. I prayed about it, which meant I asked Lynette. Lynette is my wife. Then I talked to God. And I politely turned that offer down because I wasn't sure my gifts lay in that direction. I was really surprised by the offer. Hold on. Where's my glass of water? Thank you. You sure? Ah, that's the one with gin in it. Thank you. It's good for the voice. Trust me. I was totally surprised by that offer. I had been a priest for 7 years. All my experience before being ordained was in the retail world. I was working in a retail family business for years, and then Lynette and I bought our own business, which was on its last legs. The bank even told me, "Don't do that. It's not worth the money they want to sell it for." But he said, "But you are." I said, "Well, if I'm doing that, can you throw in some money for the cash register while we're at it?" And I did. And we turned that business into a rousing success. And from that, we went to seminary. But none of that experience included starting anything new. Even my first posting as a priest after seminary was to go to a mission church. Actually, I was a deacon. I wasn't even priested yet. And go to a mission church that had really had a bad time with their previous priest. who really had a hard time getting along with them, and they had a hard time getting along with him. And my charge from the bishop then, that was the late Bishop Reynolds, was to bring it into health and growth and grow it to a parish status. Now, the diocese is always interested in parish status because that means that's a financially independent group of people, and they like those kind of churches. Well, that happened over 5 years, and I thought about it, and I said, there seems to be a pattern to my life and my ministry is that, I go into the dregs and drag something up and make something out of it. I seem to be so good at it that one of the founders of Good Shepherd came to me during the first year and said, if you'll give up the priesthood and go to work for me, I'll buy you a Rolls Royce and put you on the road, and you'll have more money than you ever thought of. And I wouldn't know what to do with more money than that, so I said no. And he was halfway joking. But that was the pattern I saw. But late in 1994, the then Bishop of Tennessee, Bishop Bertram Hurlong Hall, called me, the rector of Fayetteville, while I in my office one day, and said, I want you to meet me in Monteagle tomorrow. He said, I need to talk to you. I said, okay, and we got the time. I hung up the phone, and I thought, what have I done? I've never been called to the principal's office as a priest. I don't know what's going on here. You reckon somebody in this parish has got something bad about me they want to tell him? He's met me. He knows how bad I am. But I went. And the conversation started like this. We were sitting in 2 pews in this old church. And he said, Randy, how would you go about starting a new Episcopal church? Well, fortunately, I'd thought about it after that first offer and said, well, what kind of skills are they looking for in me? The whole drip. So after a few seconds of thought, I answered him, trusting that he truly wanted my opinion. Okay. I often have made that mistake about all kinds of people, that if you ask me my opinion, you kind of want it. So you better hold on, because I'm going to give it to you. So I said, well, first, I would look for a place where the population growth was occurring, especially population growth in the 30 to 50 age group. Look around. Some of you actually fit that. A lot of us don't. That 50 age group. And then I said, I wouldn't try to start one in a declining area just to say we have an Episcopal church in that declining area population right now. I said, there's no way it could ever grow into what you needed it to be. I said it could become a ministry, but it could never grow into what you're asking. And then I said, I would try to look for a priest who could work well on his own or her own, and because I doubt there would be money for a staff. And then that priest would be someone who could get up and go to work every day without somebody looking over their shoulders telling them, get up and go to work every day. And to work hard and to be good and extroverted and be able to walk into places and tell them who you are and introduce yourself and just be present and especially because they wouldn't have an office. They don't have a church. They don't have anything. And it would have to be a priest who exhibited love and joy in ministry. Somebody really, really liked being a priest. Someone that didn't feel the onus and the responsibility as much as they felt the joy and the blessing of being called by God to be a priest. And I said it'd be someone who was stable and not someone who was looking for a 3 to 5 year stint and then move on. Now, moving on in the priesthood says moving up to a bigger church. And I said, that would not be part of it. And I said the priest would have to be good, full of people skills, really, really love people and care about them and their lives and want to share their lives. And then the bishop stopped me. And he said, he thought of all this. And he said, by the way, you're describing yourself. And I thought, uh-oh, I've stepped in it. And then he said, I want you to be that priest. And I tell you that to let you know what church planters have to be like. They have to have all of those things to plant a church, because being a church planter is so very different than being just a rector in an already established church. And in March 1995, we moved to Nolensville to begin this quest. That's just over 30 years ago. The reason it's so easy for me to remember that, our house is paid off, 30-year mortgage, you know. Nolensville had fewer than 2,500 people in it at that time. Many of the developments you are living in didn't exist 30 years ago. Kathy, your development had a horse stable in front of it. Yeah. Anybody here lives in Governor's Club? Your house was on a farm, you know, that was different. Concord Road was what's called an umbrella road. It was 2 lanes almost that went under a canopy of trees. Yeah, that's where we were going. And I said, well, where would you want us to plant that new church? And he said, I have an area picked out. We used McDonald's population projections and growth projections to see where the growth was going to occur. He said it has to be east of I-65. I thought that was where the population growth, and it was no, because the other churches in that area says it's got to be east of I-65. And it's got to be north of 96 in Franklin. It has to be south of Old Hickory Boulevard in Brentwood, and it has to be west of Nolensville Road. That's a lot of territory. So then I asked, well, how soon do we have to have this done? And now you remember, this is March. He said, Pentecost Sunday. And I said, from everything I've read and studied, it takes a year to start a new church. He said, oh, you'll be good at it. And so from that came our mission, to start a new church. From visiting the neighboring churches around us, we gathered 38 church planters to start Good Shepherd. Some of you are still here. Stand up. Stand up if you were at that first service. Come on. A number of them are in the columbarium. They're here forever. That's how much they thought of Good Shepherd. From those 38, we have grown into this. Those 38 people met in a middle school, in a community room of an electric membership co-op building in Franklin for 2 months. But then we outgrew it. That was good because it didn't have air conditioning anyway. Have you ever been to Tennessee in July with no air conditioning? And I went around and begged for places to hold services, and everyone turned me down. And I walked into Woodland Middle School with an appointment with the principal. And she said, what can I help you with, Father? And I said, yes. And I asked, and she said, you can use our school cafeteria every Sunday, but you can't give us any money. I said, no money? She says, no. And I said, well, what can we give stuff to you that you need? And she said, sure. You'll have to pay one of our coaches to come and unlock the doors and then stay and lock the doors when you leave. I said, we can handle that. Ask those people what it's like to worship 5 years in a middle school cafeteria. that smells of Friday's lunch. Ask them how many tables and chairs they have moved. After 5 years, we moved into her long hall. Ask them how many times they took down and set up her long hall in the 5 years we were in there, or 6 years. And that was before we ever were able to worship a single time here. That's what defines a church planter, and that's what's in your genealogy. Your genealogy as a church is being full of people who will go so far to have an Episcopal church in their area that they will do that. And a number of you came in the middle school. And a number of you came when we had we're worshiping in our what's now Parish Hall. And many of you have come here. And many of you have come since I've retired. 7 years ago, last month, is when I retired. We had no building. We had no BCPs. We had no hymnals. We had no office. We only had my personal vestments, which was one set. We had a communion set that was loaned to us by the diocese. We had no musical instrument, except that one of our sister churches, St. George's, says, you need something that you can play music on. And I thought they were talking about, they had a little bitty thing in those years that would match the hymnal, had it was CDs that matched. And no, they gave us $5,000 to buy our first musical system. A keyboard, 4 big speakers that stood this high, more wires than you can think. And soon Lynette and I bought a Ford Aerostar van to pack it all in. We took the back seats out and we packed a church into that van that was stored in a storeroom in our house. Every Saturday, we packed that van, we brought it to the middle school, we unpacked that van, we put it in the middle school, we repacked it into the van and carried it home, and then we carried it back into the house. And evidently, I am the only one in creation who could pack and unpack that van and get it all to fit. I'm a Tetris hero. But what we had was a church. We had a church. We didn't have any of that stuff. We had a church made up of people with a common mission. And that common mission is all it took. Our mission was to start a new church and bring it to life, and we did. And for that, I'm extremely grateful to God for the opportunity. And I'm extremely grateful for you that all of us took that challenge and did it. The train got thrown in for free. You are the result of that work. You are the result of that work. And I am grateful to come here today and to see you here. If you have a 50th, or when you have your 50th, and if I'm still around, look for me to come hobbling in the back door and be here to help you celebrate that day too. God's blessings be upon you.
Thank you, Randy. One of the things I found out this week that I didn't know was that June 4th, 1995 was Lynette's birthday. And so for her birthday present, Randy asked her to come with him to the electric company and help him start a church. Now, Randy, that's some birthday present. You romantic devil, you. But seriously, And I know this from experience, no one successfully plants a church or works that hard in ministry without 100% buy-in from their spouse. Randy may have been the planter, but Lynette was with him every single step of the way. That Good Shepherd flourished under their leadership and is still here today is the result of the hard work that they both did and of their shared ministry. We owe them our thanks because everything around you is the result of that work that they did together. So thank you from the bottom of my heart and from the bottom of all these other hearts for everything that you, Lynette, and Randy have done for Good Shepherd. And for those of you who have been here for a while, I also want to let you know, if you haven't seen her already, that Cynthia Seifert joined us here this morning. And Cynthia is now the rector of St. Philip's, right? I'm going to get this wrong. I'm so sorry. At where? Okay, in Lebanon. She's priest in charge in Lebanon. But she was here as an associate for a while. And so it was Cynthia's efforts, too, that have contributed to who we are and where we are today. Now, my part of this tag team sermon this morning is to talk about how we ought to be thinking about going about serving the Good Shepherd for another 30 years here at Good Shepherd. When I interviewed with the vestry, the parish was coming up on its 25th anniversary. And I told them in the interview that I was committed to making sure that Good Shepherd would be here for another 25 years, that everything about my time here would be focused on that. But now it's my dream that it's another 30 years, and that we can build on that foundation that was laid by Randy and Lynette and continue to grow into the congregation that God has called into this place. Now, to put that dream into context, I want to give you a little short passage from St. Paul. Most of you probably have heard it before. St. Paul says in his first letter to the Corinthians, because they were having an argument, what is or who is Apollos after all, and who is Paul? Ministers through whom you became believers, just as the Lord assigned each one. I planted, Apollos watered, but God caused the growth. And then he mixes his metaphors, and he goes on to say, according to the grace of God given to me like a wise master builder, I laid a foundation, and another is building upon it. But each one must be careful how he builds upon it. For no one can lay a foundation other than the one that is there, namely Jesus Christ. I have been blessed to play Apollos to Randy's Paul and to water what he did, he sowed, or to build upon the foundation that he laid. You'll have to forgive me, Paul mixed his metaphors, so why not? Now, I want to hold, though, out of that little passage, two other things that Paul said. First of all, God gives the growth, and that the foundation that is laid must be laid on Christ Jesus. So long as we firmly stay fixed on that foundation, and we tend carefully to our own spiritual nourishment and growth, God will give us growth. And that's what we need to think about and to seek. That foundation and what God will give us out of it. Now, why is growth so important? Well, first of all, growth is a sign of a living faith in the community and a commitment to the community of Christians that are found in this place. We want to welcome new people to Good Shepherd because what we have in Christ is life-changing and life-saving. We want Good Shepherd to grow because we have this marvelous treasure, a vision for life that has meaning, that reveals the image of God in each one of us, and the glory that God created us to live into. We want a community of Jesus followers who have been blessed and want to share that blessing with others. Growth is not about filling pews so that somebody else can help us pay the bills. God gives growth so long as we remain true to our calling. And we have something wonderful to share, and it is attractive to others. Now, in the back of our bulletin, most weeks, although not this morning, sadly enough, you'll find the following statement. It says, our commitment at Good Shepherd is to build disciples for Jesus Christ. Therefore, we seek to be discipled for worship, discipled for formation, discipled for action, and discipled for community. Worship, formation, action, and community are the building blocks of faithful Christians, and we will need to work to sustain our commitment to them over the coming years. Now, I'm going to work through a little bit of this, but in reverse order, because I think people actually choose to make a church their spiritual home by starting with the community. At Good Shepherd, we must continue to be a welcoming, vibrant, arms outstretched, we're glad you're here kind of community. Survey after survey shows that in the wider culture, we are becoming lonelier and more isolated each and every day. The little screens in our pockets and all the technology that we have developed was supposed to make us more connected. And yet it seems that it's having the opposite effect and making us more depressed and anxious, more fearful of face-to-face interaction, and less likely to seek out community. Excuse me. I think Randy shared. A real community with real people who have skin on goes a long way to combating these kinds of problems and more. More and more churches are going to be one of the very few places where people can gather together. And our community will need what we have to offer at Good Shepherd. We also need to be the community of the church because in years ahead, it's already there in some places, it's going to get increasingly difficult to be a Christian in the places where you work or go to school. Already, many of you work in jobs or in settings where any reference to your faith or the values that faith has given you are forbidden. Where coworkers feel free to denigrate those who mention that they attend church. Our children and students are often attending schools where their faith is ridiculed and where they're encouraged indirectly or directly to abandon it. Christianity is going to become more and more countercultural, and those who hold a living faith are likely to feel like they live a double life. What I dream for Good Shepherd, what I pray for Good Shepherd, is that this will be a place where people can come and drop that double life at the door, where we are free to be who we truly are, where we can bring our joys and our blessings and our hurts and our pains and know that we have friends and people there in our community who will rejoice with us and who will weep with us, where we can learn to see and to celebrate the image of God in ourselves and in all of the others. People will take the gamble to commit to a community when they see how that community treats one another and how they serve others. That's the point of being discipled for action. A community, especially a community of Jesus Christ, that does not serve others with joy and ever looking for more needs that they can meet or assist in solving, is a community that will not interest other people. We need a community committed to formation. Now, lots of us think that formation is just Sunday school and Bible study, and I have to say that's absolutely essential. But formation is about everything that molds you into a mature Christian. Everything that we do and say, from learning to pray and pray deeply and seriously and daily, to Bible study, to all sorts of, to learning how to pass on our faith to our children. All of those are things that are necessary for spiritual maturity. You know, St. Paul asks the Corinthians just before the passage I read this morning, he says, do y'all really want to continue being babies in the faith? Babies that can only have milk because you're incapable of eating anything else? Or do you want to learn to eat meat? Now, to those of you who are vegetarians, I apologize, but we really need to learn to be meat-eating Christians. A diet of milk is not enough for people who hope to grow and reveal Christ in the world. And then there's worship. Worship is the heart and soul, the very root of Christian life. And at Good Shepherd, we're working to create a community of faithful, committed, regular Christians. Not folks who are simply habitual Christians or who are present on Sunday when it happens to be convenient. But a community that looks forward to coming together every single week and offering their praise and thanksgiving to God for the work of Christ in their lives and the opportunity to be in relationship with one another in the safe haven of God's love. Worship is where we learn who God is and who we are, where we receive great lashings of grace, and where we're nourished with the most important food of all, the body and blood of Christ Jesus. Worship is at the core of the Christian life, because worship is where we find Christ. Now, 5 years ago, we were only 3 months into the pandemic when a group of really daring lay leaders at Good Shepherd adopted this mission to build disciples as the theme for the second chapter in Good Shepherd's story. Randy, with Lynette beside him, laid a solid foundation. But today I ask you, let us commit ourselves individually and corporately to building on that foundation so that Good Shepherd is here for another 30 years and will be the spiritual home of generations to come. Amen.
Thanks for listening. If you're interested in hearing our sermons in real time, you can check us out at our website, www.goodshepherdbrentwood.org, or attend online during our 10:15 Sunday live stream on YouTube. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Good Shepherd Brentwood. If you have any questions or comments, or maybe you'd like to meet with one of our clergy, you can email us at office@goodshepherdbrentwood.org. Or if you're interested in visiting in person or have questions about our programs and services, you can text 615-637-3738, where you'll be contacted by our staff. We'd love to meet you.